very much for coming to Bruka Theatre today. We are honored to be part of this presentation in the Nevada Women's History Group and the MGM Hello Hollywood Hello presentation with these incredible artists. My name is Mary Bennett. I'm the producing artistic director here at the Bruka Theatre, and we are very pleased to have you in our space. Hope that you'll come and enjoy a show with us sometime and see live Reno Theatre, which we celebrate 25 years next year. So we were very excited to be able to work with this group and also be able to work with the Eardleys. And we just want to talk a little bit about the set, just so if you all come up onto the set, you'll know why on earth we have animal heads on the wall as we celebrate Hello Hollywood Hello. These are from the Wilbur May Museum, and we're very, very delighted that they would share this with us and loan these to us. And so that is why these heads are here. It doesn't have anything to do with Hello Hollywood Hello. With that in mind, I'd like to introduce Patty, and thank you so much for bringing your wonderful people into Bruka Theatre.
Everything concerning this program has been donated by the performers and our sponsors, and we are very grateful for their largesse. Without ado, I'd like to thank you.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Michael Eardley, and I have the distinction of having opened and closed our little cabaret show called Hello Hollywood Hello. This is not going to be your average TED Talk, which takes a lot of presentation. This is going to be very much us winging it. We've tried to take note of little things that stick out in our personal experience. A lot of the show has become part of Northern Nevada folklore, including the cost of mounting the show. We have tracked it down to somewhere between $5 and $20 million. The truth lays somewhere in that margin. But we do know that the show was paid for in the first 2.5 years. It was quite a feat for Northern Nevada to bring this thing here and have it so popular. In its 11-year run, we had some 7,000 performances, which made up for over 7 million reservations. A little impact on Northern Nevada. Yeah. We had a crew of over 60 backstage technicians. We had over 50 wardrobe technicians and a 17-piece live orchestra that played every night with the show. And on stage, when we first started, we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 performers. I like to equate my impression of the Hello Hollywood stage as somewhere between a 3-ring circus and the deck of an aircraft carrier. Because this stage itself was an incredible mechanism. There were elevators and panels that slid in and staircases that came down. A living curtain that came out of the ceiling that supported 30-some dancers. So it was quite a piece of machinery. Let's talk about the dancers for just a second. I hope to dispel, maybe inform a little bit. A lot of people think that dancers just kind of fall into this trade. Well, I know it's the case for everyone here on stage, and for most of the dancers that I knew during my time there, they started their study somewhere between 5 and 6 years old normally. And by the time they had spent hours and hours every week, by the time they were ready to launch a professional career, they had thousands of hours of training. And so when the people came to Reno to join the show, some of them, it was their first show and they were starting in maybe their late teens. Some of them have had full careers leading up to their presence here in Northern Nevada, but all of them came with an incredible amount of training. So it wasn't something they just fell into. We had dancers from professional companies around the world. We had dancers from the Australian Ballet, the Royal Canadian Ballet, Pittsburgh Ballet, and other dance companies around Europe, South Africa, and around the United States. All of these people set up shop here, had homes, they rented apartments, they bought homes, they shopped at local stores, they had local physicians, they carved out a life here for themselves. And many of them continued their studies here. Many of them studied with the dance master Maggie Banks, which I'm sure several will refer to today. Maggie was a blessing to Northern Nevada. She was a ballet master, and I know all the serious dancers I knew in the show all studied with Maggie. Let's see. This small glimpse into our world of Backstage. I know each person has their own perspective to lend. I'd say that because of their background and experience, each one of the people you're hearing from today brought a wealth of their own personal experience and a bigger picture of the world to Northern Nevada. And we all still consider each other family, so we're going to let you in on a little family chatter. So without further ado, let me introduce our first guest. Debbie danced in Paris and in Argentina and in Las Vegas before coming to join the show in Reno, Nevada. So,
thank you, Michael. Okay. How I came to join HHH, as he said, I'd worked for Miss Bluebell. We were all Bluebell girls for 10 years, and the show in Vegas was coming to an end, and Miss Bluebell and Don Arden had come to the Stardust to audition people to come up to Reno. And I went in, and thank God I didn't have to audition because they knew me, and that was wonderful. And I went in and said hi to Miss Bluebell, and she said, "Do you want to go to Reno?" And I said, "I was going to ask you the same thing." So it was a mutual thing. So that's how I ended up here. And it was perfect for me. The little background on Miss Bluebell, what it means to be Miss Bluebell. I was born and raised in Britain, and in the 50s and 60s, if your daughter, as parents, if your daughter joined the Bluebell girls, you knew she was going to be taken care of. There was a dress code. You never went out without makeup. You could not wear pants, and you had to wear, a lot of times, depending on where she had her troops, you had a chaperone. So it was a very secure, wonderful group to work for, and dispel any idea that dancers are kind of next to a stripper or next to a hooker. Get rid of all of those ideas, because we were all professionals. See, that's Miss Bluebell in the middle, and that's from, I believe that's from the Lido in Paris. And up front is a book of the Lido in Paris, where Miss Bluebell started the Bluebell Girls in 1948. And it's open to a picture of me with Maurice Chevalier on his 80th birthday, and I was 18. So, I mean, there's lots of history back there. So, who Miss Bluebell was? An amazing woman. She was adopted, raised in my own town, went through World War II, hiding her Jewish husband. They started the Lido with 2 other people, her and her husband, in 48. In 58, they brought the show to the Stardust in Vegas, and back then they imported all of the dancers, all of the singers, performers, costumes, and some of the scenery. So, in 58, Vegas was run basically by the mob. Okay, so as I told you, Miss Bluebell took care of her girls. So before the show opened, the mob's people talked to Miss Bluebell and said, "We need to talk about having your girls go out and entertain in the casino." My girls don't do that. Wow. So, and they basically said, "Well, you're in Vegas and you have to do it our way, blah, 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 blah." So she said, "My girls don't do that." So a few days before, when they kept pushing this, She said, if you push this, I will take my goals home. Wow. And she would have done. And I think if, with her knowledge of her history of going through Paris during World War II, and there she is, that's Miss Bluebell. The gentleman on the right is Don Arden, who is he's the director and produced all of these shows. Next thing, so, big hat. So I must admit, I'd worn a lot of heavy costumes prior to here. But these, are you going to put it on? Oh, sure. These hats in this show were the biggest I'd ever worn. And this was actually not my hat. I had a different hat. It was this color, but a darker purple. Okay. And
obviously, this is not my hat either.
And I've got two quick stories. One, when the costume designer came from LA. So we're fitting these big hats. Now what we used to do, we used our hair to hold the hats on. So I had long hair, I put it up in a bun, and then I would take a section. You see, we would put this on around here. So this would be, you'd have your hair up in a bun, and then you put this on, and you would put grips here. And then there'd be a cone set inside of the hat that you would push into there. Not like that, just a hair cone. Sewn into the inside.
To the front, inside.
And then some people would wear straps under their chin, but I would tighten it and I would put it behind it. So I'm having a fitting, and I've got my hair all ready as I would normally do for putting anything on. And the guy who was fitting me said, well, you can't wear your hair like that. And I almost wanted to say, how long have you been wearing big hats? But I didn't, it was very nice. And he said, no, you have to take it down because the bun will get in the way of the fitting. And I said, no, this is how I wear it because I've got a quick change and I won't have blah. No, you can't wear it. So I finally just said, fine. So I took it off, put it on, to put my hair down the way he wanted it to be, put it on, fitted it, was all great. He disappears. When it came to me having a real fitting with the dresses, I put it on and I said, I need you to put a piece of foam here and a piece of foam here and the elastic around here, and then with a comb in the very front. So that's how I would fit the hats. That's that one, thank you. And I do have a story of the big, just really quickly, of the big, this was in the opening. So you do rehearsals, you learn the choreography before the costumes get there. So we had a double pirouette. A pirouette is a turn, a double pirouette. So we've learned all this costume, this choreography, double pirouette comes up, we get the hat on. Well, that's not happening. So once the costumes came, a lot of choreography had to be changed. Just because the costumes were so big, so cumbersome, that we had to re-choreograph numbers. And I think that's it. Why I stayed in Nevada. I married my wonderful husband, David Kladney, who many of you know. He was an attorney here in town, and he opened up his own business. And I subsequently went to school. We had 2 children together. I went to school, got a degree in early childhood education, and I worked at a local school here. And I love the area.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about Karen. Karen started her career in movement at a very early age. She came from being a championship skier into the Hello Hollywood show. There had to be some dance along the way. But she has the distinction of being one of our local girls. She came from Northern Nevada, and after the show closed, she purchased the entire collection of the Hello Hollywood costumes. So her company, Karen Burns Productions, is responsible for curating this collection of incredible costumes. And Karen's going to tell you all about her relationship with these costumes
And thank you all for being here and just having an interest in this show. As Michael alluded to, I was one of the very first and very few locals that was in the show because they imported all these exotic women from elsewhere besides Reno. And being raised in this area, well, 60 plus years, and I graduated at the University of Nevada, Reno. Raised my daughter here, and I've had my company, Karen Burns Productions, now for over 30 years. Wow. And my big claim to fame is, or historical claim to fame in this area, is owning these costumes. When Hello Hollywood Hello opened, there was 1,392 costumes, and I own almost 1,200 of them.
Wow.
Yeah. And these costumes are so spectacular that the Costume Society of America once came to Reno to do a study of them, which is a huge honor because that's usually for museum pieces. And these costumes have been featured in numerous historical society and museum exhibits. And I currently have, well, this costume here, Heatwave, is on permanent loan down in Las Vegas, and it's featured in the Las Vegas, Nevada State Museum.
Wow.
According to the New York Times, I might just own one of the largest private collections of vintage stage costumes. Kind of a big deal on that one. And these costumes, and what a stage show it was. When MGM Hello Hollywood Hello opened in 1978, it was billed as the biggest show in the world, on the biggest stage in the world, in the biggest little city in the world. It was a big deal. And every lecture that I do, because that's one of my passions, is lecturing, because I have my teaching credentials from UNR. So my education passion, I still have my license to teach kindergarten through high school, and so it's my real passion to share these costumes, and particularly the history of what they represent. So every premise of my presentations are costumes tell stories. And the story that we're telling today are the ones from Hello Hollywood Hello. And I'm taking these 5 questions that were already submitted to me from the Nevada Women's History Group. So hopefully some of these were questions of interest already that you let me know this is what you want to know. Were the costumes made locally? Oh no. These couture costumes have quite the costume pedigree. They were designed and made by well-known and Emmy Award-winning costume designers Pete Menefee, Bill Campbell. Again, 1,392 costumes, but that's just saying one costume. But, excuse me, not one piece, but it's like the big hats. Okay, you have the big hat, you have the dress, you have the choker, you have the slip that goes underneath, you have the tights, you have the jewelry. So everything has 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 pieces. There were 7 costume companies involved with creating the costumes, 4 in Hollywood that did movie and TV costumes, 2 in New York, Broadway costume houses, and 1 in Paris, very famous Mel Petit. The feathers were all imported from Paris, and allegedly there were 2,500 pounds of feathers to open the show. Every single rhinestone, every single crystal is Swarovski rhinestone crystals. Yeah, 12 pounds right here. And the rumor was that there was a worldwide shortage of Swarovski rhinestone crystals when the show opened up because there were so many of them. And again, all rhinestones and each one of these, Swarovski. Some people think, you know, I just went to Walmart and got some plastic things and hot glued them on. I did not make it design any of this. Again, this is Emmy, Tony Award-winning costume designers. Michael talked about how many 144 performers. We changed costumes about 14 to 18 times a show. We talked about building and constructing these costumes. So there were 39 body measurements taken for the women. I didn't know we had that many measurements. For the men, 28. 5 measurements just for the headpieces and hats, and there was over 250 wigs. What about the shoes? Did we have to provide our own shoes? No, there were over 900 pairs of custom-made leather shoes provided by 3 footwear manufacturers. Again, Hollywood, Broadway, Paris. So 11 measurements were taken of the foot and an actual outline drawing. And here's just a few of them. This is for the guys. This would be the Nob Hill one, which Catherine will talk about. Nob Hill here. These were from the turn of the century. Here was from space. This was from the Radio City Rockettes Tiller number. And the most impressive one is the boot over here. Mike, would you mind?
That's on the
This is from Space. And again, this is full-on leather. Yeah, you wear that well. Full-on leather boot here. Supposedly this boot was $975 300 years ago, before it was all this was added on to it. And the robot costume is one of my favorite, and also that was designed by Pete Menefee, who I've now become quite good friends with. Met him down in Las Vegas. I said when I met Bob Mackey that time down there. And Pete Menefee actually, if you see this boot, he got the job to do Kiss's first costumes off of that boot. And you can see that. And I don't have time to tell them, but it was a Bob Mackey connection with Cher, connection with Gene Simmons, and then Pete Menefee creating the show. They said, oh, we should do the costumes. And so again, and I could go on for 5 hours on the pedigree, so I've got to keep moving. So those are just a little bit, 900 pairs of shoes. What happened to the costumes when the dancers moved or quit? Well, obviously they didn't take anything with them. So the contracts lasted 6 months in Reno, and so in 11 years it was quite a few cast changes. So they altered the existing ones because the costumes were made, custom made for the girls or performers that opened the show. And so when a new person would come in, let's say I'm coming in, I'm replacing Jill, well, they'd try to get me in all of Jill's costumes, you know, to alter them. Well, sometimes the alterations didn't work. And so, do you remember this happening? Is that they would take, okay, Jill's costumes didn't work for me, but oh, one of your costumes worked for me. So they would take her costume away from her because they could alter it to fit me. And you can imagine if you had a costume you really liked and they took it away from you because they had to give it to someone else. Create some backstage drama, you know? And what do you do with shoes? That was a real problem because, again, they're all custom-made shoes. They had a stockpile of some extra ones, but there was a real problem with shoes. And I have a sad story with these Tiller boots, is I had to wear boots that were too small and do the Tiller kick line. Yeah, and I ended up having to have foot surgery and almost ending my career. And it was like, that was just what you dealt with. Everybody thought I was kind of making it up that I didn't want to be in the kick line. It's like, no, it's hurting my foot. And surgery later. There was a day shift that worked 8 hours a day, cleaning and repairing. It's all dry cleaning and hand cleaning. We used pit pads. Pit pads, yeah. Because in every costume, you know, so you wouldn't perspire. That's what saved a lot. Yeah. And yeah, bring those because that's what saved the costumes. Day shift, 8 people working 8 hours. Swing shift, 33 dressers to change us and all this. And then we'll talk about quick changes later on when we have all
In terms of size for the costumes, there were some parameters hiring parameters for the dancers. Pony dancers, they had to be at least 5'5", was it? Or 5'6"?
No, it was 5'8".
5'8".
Oh, 5'8" for the short dancers.
Wow.
And then the
Ponies were
Bluebells
5'6" to
and
5'8".
Paul Newts were 6 foot plus. My next presenter is, I hate to play favorites, but it's in my contract. I'd like you to meet Catherine Devendorf Eardley, who's a lecturer in dance at TMCC, by the way, to this day. And my partner.
So I was one of those kids whose mom owned a dance studio. She does still today in upstate New York. I would spend my summers down in New York City taking master classes, and that era was the era of Bob Fosse and Michael Bennett and Jerome Robbins. I went to audition for Radio City Rockettes, and the first thing they did is put me against the wall. And Radio City Rockettes were 5'6" to 5'8", or 5'6.5" to 5'8.5", and I'm 5'10". So they didn't even let me audition, which crushed me. I mean, I felt like an Amazon woman in my dance studio all through my career, and I think we can all attest to that. You know, you get tall, and you kind of feel out of place in the world of dance. So my parents really encouraged higher education, very important. I went to the Ohio State University and graduated with a degree from there. And then came out here and auditioned for the Hello Hollywood show. And believe me, I walked backstage and I thought, oh, these are my people. You know? This is incredible. Was fortunate enough to get the job. After the first 6 months of the 6-month contract, after the first contract, I was offered a position in the show called a swing. And you've heard us allude to the different groupings. We had ponies, we had bluebells, we had tall nudes, you had the male dancers, you had the female lead singers, male lead singers. So I was in the bluebell section. And what a swing meant was the show went 7 nights a week. We all worked 6 nights a week. So there was one night that you had off. I happen to have Wednesday nights off. So when I would come in on Thursday, my captain would come to me and say, okay, Catherine, you're going to do Susie's opening number, and you're going to do Jill's Heat Wave, and you're going to do, so you would get the different girls. So my job was to know every piece of choreography on the stage, stage right, stage left, every costume that our bluebells wore, and I would walk in that night and be told what to do. It was a pretty incredible, fun job. So being the swing, we had some of the costumes that were ours, as Karen was talking to, and mine, Karen was sweet enough to bring mine. This is the original costume.
Still has her name in it.
Still has my name in it. And in that costume, there was the stage show, and in that costume I met my husband. I was a little bit late getting onto the set, and as the curtain was going up, I was running up the stairs, and I got to my place, and Mike looked down and went, good one. And I was so worried, I was so green, and I was so worried that I'd get fired, that I went up to him and said, Mr. Eardley, I'm really sorry I was late for your number. I guess he was so charmed he asked me out. We both had Wednesday nights off. That's how I met my husband. One of the interesting things that we had to kind of face, if you will, in the community, and Debbie talked about this a little bit, was the perception of what a showgirl was. And one of my favorite conversations about that was Ted Nugent got married on our stage, and we were his bridesmaids in our Nob Hill costumes, and the paper wrote about the scantily clad showgirls that were his bridesmaids. And I'm laughing, I'm thinking, you see our shoulders and our fingertips. So again, that perception was there, and yet you've been training for a position in this world since you were 3 or 4, and it didn't stop. You didn't get the job and stop, but you continued your craft in classes, in teaching, as you were dancing professionally. Company warm-ups. You didn't walk backstage before a show without seeing people doing, you know, a warm-up, a bar warm-up. It's a constant maintenance. It's not great, got the knowledge, off I go. Constant maintenance for us. I met my husband, stayed here 31 years, we've been married, we have 3 sons. I love this. I remember coming into Reno and seeing the mountains and falling in love with that. Falling in love with the people here. The Finleys were some of our first friends, Howard, some of our first friends. And we just really invested our lives, our business, our families here. And recently my husband won a Grammy Award, and I was thinking, we have no desire to move to New York or move to LA. We can do that right here in our community, where we love raising our children and having our business with the people here. So we're here. You're stuck with us.
Our next presenter, beginning her dance training at the age of 6 in California, Linda continued study in Chicago, Florida, Texas, graduated from the National Academy of Arts, and danced with the National Ballet Company. Linda danced as principal dancer at La Scala in Madrid, Moulin Rouge in Las Vegas, and Sun City in South Africa, before performing with Hello Hollywood Hello as principal dancer. So please welcome Deputy Public Defender of the Criminal Division of Washoe County, Linda Nordvig.
My parents didn't like the smell that was coming from Golden Gate Park in 1965 and didn't think it was where they wanted to raise their 2 children, so we moved back to the cornfields of northern Illinois. Yeah. As you heard, I was able to study with some of the most wonderful, noted ballet stars and teachers, most of whom are gone now. But in the mid to late 70s, we had a little arts crisis in the United States. We were in one of our mild recession periods, and companies and schools were closing left and right. So off I went to Europe and ate my way through Germany, drank my way through France, and left at 107 pounds and came back at 137 pounds 3.5 months later. No wonder I didn't get a ballet job. Besides the fact that I too, even though I was one of the shortest here, was considered an Amazon. I got this call from actually Michael's understudy, who had performed with a teacher of mine and said, "We need tall girls for Rio." Well, that's what I was told. It was Reno. So I land in Reno in March of 1979 at the really old age of 19. Auditioned for Hello Hollywood in between shows. That meant I had to walk in the front of the showroom, go to the stage right side of the showroom. So I was over here. And there were some stairs that came up, and the company manager's office was way behind Michael, an acre away. So here I am, this little girl from the cornfield. There's an airplane on stage. All these people running around. So I did my audition with the two Bluebell captains, who were taller, and they had these huge eyelashes on. I was like, oh my God. So, anyway, I got the job. 6 weeks later, I had to be back. Well, 5 weeks later, I had to be back for rehearsal. I got the job at 137 pounds. They told me to lose 10. I came back at 112. Wow. And they told me to gain weight. I've never been told that since. So that's what got me here. In the meantime, we had a little shake-up, and one of the principal female dancers retired from dancing and became our company manager. Her name is Jillian Mishoey. And she and her husband came up here to open the show. And they were some of Debbie's cohorts in Vegas. So Jillian retired, and she was half an inch shorter than I was, and about the same weight, and I could wear her costumes. So 6 months after I came, they started noticing that I was actually a Betty ballerina, and I could do the ballet things in the show, so I got to start learning them and understudying. That's the guy that made the phone call. So Jilly saw something in me. I was able to work with her husband because we were the exact same size, exact same proportions, and I wasn't too long for the guys to lift. During my career in Hello Hollywood, I left and came back. I had 23 male partners for one of the main numbers. I started here, then I went off. I was lucky enough to go to all the wonderful places Michael told you about. I met my first husband here. We came back and things didn't work out, so I stayed. And then the guy I went to for my divorce is also here. Mr. Kladney. So he said, you pay my secretary to type up your divorce papers, and I won't charge you as long as you go back to school. Wow. So me at the age of, let's see, I was probably 27-ish, went back to start my bachelor's because of him. So the show closed. So I go from Bluebells into tall nudes. And I have to wear one of these. It's 12.5 pounds. Right?
No.
And most of it These hanging straps you don't wear. So it all goes around your neck. Okay? So it's got this wonderful slit and all these little things that flap around, right? And this is the back.
Wow.
Needless to say, I couldn't fit into that. At the beginning, we didn't have the straps, but you had to work with these.
Oh, Mom.
And you also had a headpiece.
And all in heels.
And all in heels. And you ran. Okay? So, one of my most embarrassing times on stage before I became a principal was doing this in the back, where I went like this, and hit the girl next to me, caught on her wig, and had to do this. Needless to say, she wasn't very happy. Now, I'm holding these for about 30 seconds, and I can feel my hands. It took some rehearsal to learn how to use these, learn it properly, but it was a gorgeous number. Now, this was the first night and day dress I wore. There was another one, made of the same fabric, just a lot less of it. The bottom part of what we call the heat wave costume, the red one, is called a G-string. The bottom part of my dress for the next time, I was lucky enough to understudy and be the only person that could fit into that dress, was also a G-string. And so the rest of it was kind of like chaps without a middle seam. And a strap coming up here and around here. And a wig and a pair of fins. And was fortunate enough to have some wonderful partners for that one as well. So fast forward, the show's closing, we're all crying. We've had 86 marriages in our big family. At that point, there were at least 65 kids between cast, crew, and wardrobe. And we're all splitting up. I still have a year to go on my bachelor's. So I went to work for Frederick Abcar at Harris, and Mr. Kladney came to see me, and in between shows said, "What are you going to do now?" I said, "Oh, I'm going to go to Vegas and get a job." He said, "You're pushing 30. Why don't you see if you can get into law school?" Who'd want to be a lawyer? Well, he made a bet. Helped me through the LSATs, made a bet that I could get into law school. Then it was apply to law school. Then it was go visit law schools. So because of him, I've had a 23-year career now as a public attorney in York County. One thing I'd really like to stress is not the costumes, it's not the pretty pictures, it's not the crazy things that we do. It's the fact that we all loved it here. This is one show of many that I've done that I am in touch with so many people, and they are my family. I came here at 19, I got married, I got divorced, I went through some deaths in my family. They were all here. They're all still my family. And we have reunions. We get together at least once or twice a year on a bigger scale. Hello Hollywood performers are the godparents of my child. It's just very special. Thank you.
I'd like to know about the logistics of changing these huge costumes. How much space was there? How many dressers? I mean, these are huge.
Well, that's what
Thank you for bringing up, yeah, that was the last question on here. We ran out of time. So I'm going to do that real quickly here because there was a day crew, which a lot of people didn't realize. The day shift crew worked 8 hours from 8 to 4. There were 5 seamstresses, 1 wig hairdresser, and an outside cobbler that came every day to pick up the shoes. At night there were 33 dressers. And even though you call dressers, they didn't actually, you didn't stand there and they dressed you. You put on almost, 90% of your costume, and they were there just to zip you up or to hook something. And with these costumes, they're made for quick changes. For instance, the zipper back here, see how big the zipper is? Yeah. This is a tent zipper. This is a tent zipper, it's huge, big. And then all the snaps are called Whopper Poppers because they're so big. And, yeah, isn't that a great name, Whopper Poppers? And thank goodness for the miracle material Velcro. Yeah. And so for quick changes, you were responsible for laying out all of your quick changes, presetting them. The dancers were responsible for that. As females, we had an eternity to change, which was usually about 5 to 10 minutes, which in show business is an eternity. The guys had shorter ones, like minute and a half, because there were like a third less dancers in it. But everything was organized like to a military drill backstage. That you set out everything exactly the same every night. The dresser did exactly the same thing. You had to take your costumes off with some sort of care, because again, these costumes were a minimum of $1,200 a piece 30 years ago. So you couldn't just rip it off and throw it on the ground. You had to take it off with care, hang it up, or lay it on a
and a quick change was you literally took the costume off and stepped out of it, got into your next one, because you may have less than a minute. Got into the next one, your dresser did you up, and when you went on stage, your dresser picked up the costume that you had just gotten out of.
But it was on a sheet.
It was on a sheet.
They put down 90 sheets a night.
Yeah.
To go, because again, it's to protect it.
And bear in mind, this is the largest stage in the world.
Yeah.
The wings, just the wings area, both stage right and stage left, were at least as wide as this room and about 3 times as long. So there was a lot of space back there. There was strategic locations where these costumes were preset. The girls ran off stage, took the last costume and got into the next one, and made it back out.
So just for
on
the
stage.
opening, we'd come off from the opening, we'd drop our costumes, our feathers would fly down on racks.
Because they were so large, they had to store them.
They stored them up on top. They were covered in sheets. So they'd bring them down. You'd step under whatever feathers you were wearing that night. You drop that costume. You get your G on. You get your jewelry on. You put your feather backpack on. You put your hat on. If you had earrings, you had to do that. You'd run out, go up the stairs, come down the stairs. So nice. Run back, hang your feathers up, drop your G, get into that 12.5-pound dress, change your wig, get your fans, and get ready to go out and down. And then you'd run back, drop your dress, get into that red thing, run up the back of the stairs so you could come out a staircase and a half above.
This is known as the glamour of show business.
And that's the opening section. We did 4 sections.
After you learn the choreography in a show, the most difficult part of a show are making the costume changes, because that can vary every night. And you do get in trouble if you don't make that costume change. And then she also alluded to with hair, the statement we say, you never wear your own hair in the show, because that's to help expedite costume changes, because you can't mess with your hair, have it down here and have it a wig here. So we always called it a bulletproof ballet bun on top of your head. And it was secure there because you don't have time to mess with it. You're wearing wigs and headpieces, and that's what saves a lot of times with costume changes, because you cannot mess with your hair.
I don't think Karen bought the hair, but I stole the hair.
There's a couple over here, like this one is for the knob hill, and this also has Michael Eardley's name in it, because it's from Michael Moore, with the top hat. But this was the wig that was with this, and this is the wig that was with the white dress there. And again, you can see that it has the opening here so that
And they
you put your bun
changed
at
the
the top of
first
your head.
time, when the show first opened, this was not the wig. It was a flip wig that you saw in one of the photos.
It was very 70s Barbie.
It was. And so a couple of years into the show, they changed
They're
both the
sophisticated.
opening into just like a little poof. And obviously my hair was a different color way back then, but this is one of the ones that I wore with another headpiece on top.
But it was the responsibility of each dancer to be in charge of all their costumes.
No,
Not in charge of them.
I mean, in terms
They
of
had to be
laying them out.
responsible for themselves
We
to
had
get
to
into the costume
preset
and make it to their cue on stage.
Okay.
You guys all stay really healthy?
Work through that.
I have a hip replacement that I got 2.5 years ago. I had minor ankle surgery twice. We did not have injuries. You wear flesh-colored tape. You wear ace bandages with training tape that you put makeup on. Ben Gay and Tiger Balm were hot commodities. Advil, ice.
I suppose you're all familiar with the stories of professional athletes who find a way to make it back out there onto the field in horrible conditions sometimes. Let me tell you, these dancers are tough. They are top athletes, and I've seen them go out with, you know, bloody feet, nails ripped off. The show must go on. That's what we all lived for back in those days. And
I had a pair of point shoes that were my pride and joy because they had blood spots that had pushed through to the pink satin. And my mother, bless her, made me a memory box with those shoes.
I was only in the show less than 2 years and then just thought, oh, you know, I've been dancing professionally for 4 years, I should start my own production company. And so I had my own production company for like 30 years plus, but at the time, MGM was still running, and then when it closed, I was doing what was called business theater and conventions and stuff, working with ballets and having access to the stage and actually some of the costumes. And at the time, Dana Blanc, I said, I want to buy some of these costumes. He goes, we have Universal Studios, Bally's Las Vegas, MGM Las Vegas, and a German company. Do you think you're gonna, buy this? So there was an ongoing, not joke, but for 5 years, every time I was doing something, I'd walk in the office and he'd pick up the phone and go, security, throw this woman out of here. It was just so annoying. And then the stars lined up when Hilton bought it because they had all the costumes. In fact, rumor has it that they spent over $10,000 boxing and bubble wrapping the costumes. And a German company was supposed to buy the whole Backstage and costumes, and that fell through. Universal Studios was supposed to buy some of it, but the props were so big, no one could accommodate them, not even Universal Studios Orlando. And so they started destroying all the sets, which was really sad to go back there to see them chopping them all up. And so then this other deal fell through with this German company, and And so I said,
you should see Karen's living room now.
so I said, I want to buy, and he says, okay, because Hilton had bought it, and Hilton didn't want to have any connection with, with MGM, because they're Hilton. And thank goodness when the corporate world did work in my favor is get rid of all that crap down there that's taking up so much room. Yeah, and so he said, give me a proposal to buy X amount, what you want. And I said, I want 5 of this, 5 of this, 5 of this. Gave him a handwritten proposal like this, and he says, quadruple it by 20 and we can make a deal. And I almost fell into the elevator. And within 48 hours, I got the loan from the bank, got 3 trucks, loaded up, and I'm still paying the loan off.
There was an advertisement. They advertised in Hollywood, they advertised overseas. It was quite the campaign to find dancers, qualified dancers for this show. Those were the initial offerings for chorus dancers.
That's not what I made.
That's not what any of us made.
Is it more or less? It was a lot less.
Oh my goodness.
Backstage stories will abound forever, and in show business in general. Mary, have you experienced promises that didn't come through ever?
Yeah, I think that we can all attest to that, but we love working with
I will tell you that Don Arden told me at my audition, he says, make sure you keep track of all your moving expenses. We're going to bring you in as principal singer for this show, and we'll reimburse you for everything.
Sure.
I said, great. So I went and talked to him the first day of rehearsal, and he says, well, give your expenses to your tax guy. That's where you're going to get the benefit.
My first contract, which was the second contract of the show, resulted in a raise for the dancers that had opened the show, but I signed my first contract for $215 a week. But I got benefits, and I got a free meal in the cafeteria every day.
Hey, that's
And
good.
tons of friends.
My experience, because I go back 10, 11 years before this show opened, is wherever I worked, we earned more money than a lot of other professions. It wasn't great, but we earned a really good salary. And the other thing, they were talking about swings, the way they did it, so there was a set payment, a base price for a dancer. If you were a swing, you got $50 more a week. And if you worked topless, you got another $50 a week. So I was a
They're
swing.
worth $25 a piece a week.
I was a swing. I was a swing from when I first went to Vegas. I was a swing girl all through Vegas, and halfway through Vegas, I became topless. So for me, I was earning $100 more a week than the other dancers.
I
So
will
that's
tell
one
you
of the
that
breakdowns.
Catherine felt a little guilty because she was making more money than her father made back at the factory in upstate New York.
And I made more money than my mom. And she was upset because she had her master's and I had a high school diploma.
David, you had another question?
Yeah. How much did a guy have to pay in order to be the Zippo guy?
My first appearance on stage, when we first opened the show, was to be at the top of the grand staircase, and the curtain opened, and I was surrounded by these beautiful girls in very little but feathers. And the guys in the front row were looking at me saying, how did this son of a bitch get this job? Yes, ma'am.
Whose idea was it for the plane to be brought in?
Don Arden referred to the plane as his $250,000 throwaway. That was an attention getter at the top of his show.
Yes.
And it worked wonderfully. Now, the story behind this, I don't know if the video actually showed this, but as the show opened, the stage was completely bare, and there was a scrim, a translucent drop, that was painted with clouds. And behind that scrim was a model airplane. It was about this big, and they flew that model airplane in through the clouds and back off stage, and then the curtain came up, and up came the real plane with its landing lights on, blinding the audience, and dancing girls on the wings.
And another thing about the plane, there were engineers who looked at that plane and felt it had been made so well that it had the potential of actually flying. It was so, however way you design a plane, I don't know. But that was the story. They would look at it and go, yeah, I think this could actually fly.
There were
Yeah,
a couple
it was
of setbacks in rehearsal. The people who designed that plane had been brilliant to put this thing together to do what it needed to do on stage. But they delivered it on the back loading pad of the theater and discovered that the doors in the back of the theater were not large enough to get the plane in. So they dismantled the plane, got it inside the theater, put it back together, only to find out that the elevators were not designed to support the weight of the plane. We shut down the rehearsal for about a week because of that little setback.
I'm so curious, you know, you listed how many people were part of this, the crews, 60 people, all of the cast. You spoke of the orchestra. Did you work with a live orchestra every night in the show?
Every night. Now, it was a little bit of a technical coordination because obviously with the orchestra 3 floors down in a sound studio, they had to have some way of synchronizing to what was going on upstage, on the stage. So the orchestra all wore headphones, and played to what we call a click track, which was like the metronome, but it had the conductor counting off their cues, and all the sound effects and backup vocals for some of the numbers were all on tape that ran in synchronization to what the band was playing. And it was quite a technical feat to get all of that coming together.
And they'd go out after work and play at jazz clubs and little places, so we'd all get to go sing with them or listen to them, and it was just so much fun. I used to love if I had one of the sections off, if I was swinging and they didn't need me, I'd go down and I'd sneak into the band room and hear it live, and it was just a lot of fun.
Well, it's the story of what you all integrated too back into Reno that's so amazing. I mean, it really did. It brought professional artists to a beautiful mountain town, and you all stayed and have given so much. And thank you.
Oh, thank
it's
you.
really
It's so
amazing.
nice.
It is just so amazing, and the various topics that can be done.